Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course stream for fun. Today we're doing another State of Gaming. This is the SOG. We haven't done one of these in quite a while, and mainly I've been working on this one, PlayStation versus Xbox. This has really been heating up over the last while, and we had the Xbox acquisition of Activision Blizzard that they bought for $69 billion. Sony and the FTC tried stopping that, which was unsuccessful. Technically, I guess was an appeal as well, and that honestly didn't go over very well. And there's still some rumors that Xbox still might be fighting something this year with the FTC on something else, but there hasn't really been any word on that. I haven't been able to find anything. Also, we have the PlayStation leak through or the Insomniac hack, where we got some PlayStation documents that I will talk about later. This one is going to focus on studio acquisitions, the IPs that they have, and please correct me on any of these. Man, there was so much data to go through over the last 20 years. It was pretty, ridiculous. I started making this at the beginning of January. We're now halfway through February, so yeah, this is almost a month and a half of work. But I'll be doing both of these parts in quick succession. But yeah, this time we're just going to focus on the studios, what IPs they have. We're going to focus on the console sales, and we're also going to focus on the gaming subscriptions that they have, and then kind of my thoughts at the end and leading into part 2. So let's go ahead and get into this. So there's always been a console war between the exclusives and the consoles, and the idea has always been, hey, the one with the best exclusives, they will sell the most consoles. And that's how it's been for quite a long time between Sony, Xbox, or PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo, whatever they've had at the time, which has been Switch lately. We do know that Nintendo is going to be creating a Switch that's like a 2.0. We don't have an official release date, but we might even be getting that today, or that might have come out yesterday, depending on when you're watching this. We know, too, there's also going to be a refresh between Xbox and also with PlayStation. There's already been announcements for that, and there's also been leaks of that as well. And so we got so much information out there. A lot of it, too, is very diluted and very frustrating to sift through, and I'm trying to be as factual as I can be. I'm open for discussion, and I'm open for debate, too. If you want to leave anything in the comments, or send me a private message on Twitch as a whisper. So I'm willing to talk about this, and I'm willing to do updates, too, on the channel with what people are discussing. Because I think this is going to be very, very big for the industry, and this is why it's taken me so long, is because I wish to do this well, and to dissect and splice out all of this information is insane. But really, I think what's happening now between the acquisition that Xbox got last year and also the Insomniac leak of what we know now with PlayStation, we have a ton of information, and I really think it's not just kind of a unsung or kind of expected hot war anymore. I think everything has been kicked up a notch, both on PlayStation's side and on Xbox. And so we're going to totally dig into all that. Thanks for tuning in. This, of course, isn't going to have anything fancy on the screen. You're just going to be listening to my wonderful monologue voice as we're going over Xbox and PlayStation here. Of course, you can always follow me at GamingGarbage22 on YouTube, and also at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee. So with the Xbox Studios, we're going to some pretty old ones, but they have Rare, Lionhead, Mojang, which is Minecraft, Ninja Theory, Undead Labs, Compulsion Games, Playground, Obsidian, ZeniMax, Activision Blizzard now, Nemesis, and there might be a few other small ones sprinkled in there, but those are the main ones. And they've been buying these ever since from 2002 all the way to last year. So, that's 21 years of buying. A lot of their buying started showing up in 2018. So we had Mojang in 2014, which was Minecraft, and then Ninja Theory, Undead Labs, Compulsion Games, Playground, and Obsidian were all in 2018. ZeniMax was in 2020, and Activision Blizzard was officially in 2023. Would have been 2022, but not quite. But yeah, this is crazy. So like all of the stuff that they have under their umbrella is Minecraft, Sea of Thieves, Call of Duty, Overwatch, Diablo, Fable, We Happy Few now, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Dishonored, Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, Hi-Fi Rush, Evil Within, Rage, Starfield, Redfall. Both of those were Redfall was an absolute failure, unfortunately, and Redfall and Starfield, I mean, was um, less than expected, that's for sure. Psychonauts, Hellblade, Pillars of Eternity, Grounded, Avowed, which we'll be getting that later this year. Outer Worlds, which I didn't actually know that. Forza and State of Decay. And again, this is the bulk of their kind of IP library that they own and control. And so they have so much. And again, a lot of their buying was in 2018. Now, let's think back. Okay, this is quite a few years ago. We're talking going on 5.5, 6 years ago now. What was going on in 2018? Well, we had the start of Game Pass around 2016. It was getting pretty fully implemented in 2017. And, well, when you're creating a service, you need to have content on the service, especially a subscription service. And so they were buying all of these studios, and I think they were, even back then, focusing on creating what Game Pass has become today. This isn't just like it blew up in just a little minute of time. This has been almost a decade-long production of creating what Game Pass is and what we enjoy today. So yeah, they need the content for that. And not only do they need the games, they actually need the studios, because they need to continue to create content, whether it's new IPs or expanding existing ones. There's got to be that pot that they can, stew and pull from and create content for us. So looking at PlayStation, they have Bend Studios, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla, Media, Sucker Punch, Insomniac, Bluepoint, Valkyrie, Firewalk, Bungie, which was a huge one, Polyphony, San Diego, and Santa Monica. And so they have Gran Turismo, MLB, God of War, Siphon Filter. God, I love that series. Jack and Dexter is another wonderful one. The Last of Us is great. Uncharted is wonderful. Ratchet and Clank is amazing. Resistance, Spider-Man, frick yeah. Shadow of the Colossus, they need to remake it again. Demon Souls remake, those Mother Hubbards better freaking you can put that on Xbox eventually. I really want to play it. Killzone, which I wish they would make more. Horizon was really good. Sly Cooper, Infamous. Oh man, these are wonderful. Ghost of Tsushima, Twisted Metal, Destiny, which they bought, which unfortunately is becoming a dumpster fire, and Silent Hill. And so a lot of these IPs are wonderful and great, which is good. But like about half of these, they don't really make new games for anymore, which kind of sucks. Or there's a bunch of remasters, but like Siphon Filter, Jack and Dexter, Killzone, we haven't had a Horizon for a while, though there's rumors that there's some in the mix. Sly Cooper, Infamous, both of those they haven't done anything with. Twisted Metal, they decided to lease the license for a show, which is stupid. I'd rather have another game. Silent Hill, well, they did a free-to-play game that's out now for VR, and then we're getting a Silent Hill 2 remake, but again, it's like there's no new IP for that. Ghost of Tsushima, I think that's actually on Xbox now, but they control the studio. Shadow of the Colossus, they could expand that if they wanted, or even just remake it again and they would make money. Demon Souls, they technically don't own, but they had a deal with From Software, and they were able to get that exclusively for the PlayStation. But quite a few of these, they're not really digging into. They're digging into the live service stuff, and there's not even anything for Uncharted on the horizon either, which is a bummer. Their focus on MLB and Gran Turismo and The Last of Us has been a good moneymaker. The Resistance, they're still making stuff for. Destiny, that's another big live service game. And we know, too, from PlayStation that they had 12 live service games that they were making, and now they're down to 6, with most of those actually being delayed. So we got that news back in 2023. And they they had a massive decrease in sales and earnings, 45%, and just Destiny alone, which that really must have hit their pocketbook, because the light of disco, whatever it was called, was really quite the mess, and incredibly frustrating. And so yeah, with that, they're like, hey, maybe we need to actually make some better content. People really hated this. The DLC before, The Witch Queen, was really, really good, and then Light Fail was just out of place in sync and just didn't seem to go very good. And then multiple times, Destiny has now changed kind of the roadmap of what it's going to look like. We're not even going to get main drops anymore after the final shape. We're still going to get season content, of course, but again, this is a live service. And they've even, we got to hear about Marathon, which they haven't used since forever ago, when it was under Xbox's umbrella. But yeah, Marathon, they're taking it in a way I think is just totally away from the actual main story. It's going to be focused as a live service IP again. And I'm so tired of live service. Not just Sony's side. I'm not putting it all on them. It's just I am so tired of live service in general, okay? There's only so many skins that I want. So many different colors you can create and rename. I actually just want more content to play. And Destiny actually did that pretty good for a while. Was some of it pretty repetitive? Yeah, I mean, it's the same with like Assassin's Creed, right? It does eventually get pretty repetitive too. There's only so much they can do and change. But like, we need to have new IPs, and I feel like a lot of companies are going back on creating new IPs. They just want to make more remasters, and they just want to create more live service. And this is getting pretty frustrating. But back to the studios and the IPs that Sony owns. So quite a few of these they bought in the kind of early to mid 2000s. That was Bend, Naughty Dog, and Guerrilla. And then they had Media and Sucker Punch within a year of each other in 2010 and 2011. And then they had a ton of buying starting in 2019. So they had Insomniac, Bluepoint, Valkyrie, and Firewalk, and Bungie. Over, a 4-year period, they now had 5 different studios. They also created in-house Polyphony, San Diego, and Santa Monica, and they've had those 3 studios for a long time. And those have helped with making their, like, Need for Speed and their... Because, I mean, you got to think a lot of the games that they made didn't necessarily stay exclusives, but started exclusively on PlayStation because Sony was a generation ahead of where Xbox was, and Xbox wasn't made until after the PlayStation 1 had already been around for a while. And so... we had the competition of the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. And when the Xbox came out, it was like, woohoo, competition. And that's kind of when it all started for a lot of us. Okay, so talking about PlayStation. So they had all of these studios they've been buying since, 2000. And they've also had some in-house, of course. But they did a lot of their buying in 2019 through 2023. And I really think that was kind of a response to Xbox, because they had a lot of buying in 2018. They were working on creating this service and making it bigger. And definitely, I remember Game Pass, but I don't really remember it getting pretty big until like 2020. I think that was kind of the big push, maybe, or maybe toward the end of 2020 or 2019. And so I think that was kind of a response from PlayStation's side to say, hey, they're, our timed exclusives, which they were doing on a regular basis for over a decade, they're saying, hey, maybe we're not really getting the bang for our buck because this is all going to Xbox eventually anyway. And PlayStation definitely makes some wonderful exclusives, as I was going through the list there. And I think they knew they needed to change something, so they've started buying studios too. Now, of course, they don't have as many, but they have wonderful IPs. Okay, they have some wonderful IPs. And this is why I think a lot of people buy PlayStation and spend money for their console over Xbox. Even when we had the shortage in 2019, when the current gen consoles were launching, it got pretty insane for either console. But Xbox you could probably find for about $900 or $1,000 during the shortage, and then PlayStation was like $1,300. Sometimes you could find for $1,200, but not for very long, and then other times you could see it as high as like $1,600 for a PlayStation 5 console, which is crazy because that's over 300% MSRP. That is mind-blowing on how expensive that is. Okay, so yeah, PlayStation has done a ton of sales on their consoles. They've done a lot of buying, and they had these timed exclusives, which I think helped them short term, but long term, I think they were realizing they were spending all of this money for these timed exclusives. They were even doing stuff with Destiny a lot of the time in some other live service games to be like, hey, you get these actual exclusive digital content, or you get these kind of extra side quests or stories or whatever. And, some of it was mostly timed, some of it was just exclusive, but I think they saw the writing on the wall after a while, understanding that it's like, we're spending this money for something that's temporary. Instead of actually buying the actual studio or buying the IP or holding on to the licensing or whatever, I think they were understanding that they were starting to get behind the 8 ball. And we're going to get a lot into that in part 2 of this. And so looking at all of their numbers, gaming service-wise, we're looking at information from Statista, Windows Central, Microsoft's website, of course, and from Sony. And also you can take a look at, these are boring to listen to. I find them exciting, but you can listen also to the earnings calls of Microsoft and Sony. They both just had one. Wait, is today the 14th? Yeah. So Sony had one on the 14th. Microsoft's, I think, was on the 8th of this month. And they basically talk about their business as a whole. And in there is coupled with, of course, their gaming side of the business. And it is interesting to listen to. And pretty eye-opening, I think, too, of where they think their businesses should go. Because, now that we're kind of done with all of the stimulus money, all the lockdown money, all of the forbearances are over, people are having to kind of return back to normal. And what that's turning into is less sales on discretionary spending, things like with things that we want compared to things that we need, right? Like rent, electricity, and water. And so a lot of electronic companies are having to change or adjust things in their studios. We're seeing all of these layoffs, including in Sony and including in Microsoft. And it's not just in one particular area. It's generally across the board. The only sector that Microsoft isn't laying off in is actually their AI sector. That's the only one that is going strong. And that's actually where most of their revenue is coming from as a category, which is pretty crazy. So here we're going to look at gaming subs. So again, a lot of this is up to date as of 2022. I tried to get the most update numbers that I could. Again, there was so much information to dissect. There was a lot of stuff to go through, and so I made it as concise as I can. But PlayStation honestly looks like they're doing fairly good. But we're going to get into the problem that they have. And so right now, PlayStation has 47 million on PlayStation Plus. This is 33 million PlayStation Essentials. This is 6 million Extra and 8 million Premium. Now, what Premium and Extra is basically a subscription service to play some of the legacy games that they've had. Again, some of those IPs we talked about, like Twisted Metal, Silent Hill, Sly Cooper, Horizon, Infamous, etc. The old Ratchet and Clanks, which I wish they would just freaking bundle those and give them to Xbox and Switch. That would be great. But a lot of these that they haven't made IPs for, they actually just have it as a legacy service. So you pay money to have access to that digital library, and basically it's a backwards compatibility list if you want to think of it that way. And actually it's quite long. My issue, though, is that a lot of the backwards compatibility list is PlayStation 4 stuff. And if they actually took time to remaster like a Jack and Dexter collection, they would definitely make money on that. Or like a Ratchet and Clank bundle, or even break it up into collections like Volume 1, 2, and 3. I hate that idea. I wish you'd just package it all together because, right, consumer first. That's how I think about it. But businesses don't really think about it that way in most cases. But yeah, that's what Premium is. And people weren't very happy last year when Sony was like, hey, we're going to raise your prices because inflation. And so people are now spending $80 just to be able to play on multiplayer. And they also had increases to also PS Extra and PS Premium as well. Breaking down the numbers and doing the maths, total, they're making about $4.7 billion on their PlayStation Plus service. In-network is about $107 million. So they have, they have about probably 40% of their total network under some subscription service of some sort, which is crazy. Now, this in-net PlayStation Network, it's across all of the consoles that are currently active and currently have an account. And basically, you have to have an account in order to actually play anything anymore, even play on the console. Most don't allow you to just play without signing into something, right? Because they want to track some of that data a little bit and cater the sales and ads to you, right? And that's kind of how this goes. But looking at it, they got 47 million, and it's great, but it's been flat since 2020. Now, when we had these lockdowns, when people stayed home, we had unemployment that hit 20%, which is crazy, folks. We had companies that were shutting down. A lot of small businesses were shut down. Some of us have kind of forgotten really how bad it really was. If you'd love to share, man, please comment, because I know the lockdowns almost destroyed my life, and plenty of other people too, along with a lot of small businesses that never came back. But PlayStation Network and Plus, they basically saw kind of a flat during this period, which is kind of backwards. You'd think, hey, if people are staying home, if people are actually engaging more with video games, which if we remember from a lot of the big companies, including PlayStation, their revenue numbers were through the flippin' roof in 2021 and 2022. Epic Store, Steam, Xbox, Twitch, everybody, PC, gaming cards, Nvidia and AMD made a ton, so did Intel. I mean, anything related with gaming just exploded. We had all of the crypto crap, we had all the NFT birth stuff that was garbage, we had the explosion of altcoins and alt currencies and stuff, cryptocurrencies. I mean, everybody freaking made money, but what I was surprised with is that the PlayStation Plus service, it stayed flat during this period. Now, it may be muddled around a few million, but it was actually a pretty tight band. It really didn't move outside of 23 million or 42 million all the way to 47 or 48 million. It stayed within that band during that time, which was kind of shocking. Their PlayStation Network, it definitely grew because of all of the sales that they've made so far with their console, which we'll get into those two. But again, they haven't been growing their network at a really fast pace. And some of these two are repeated consoles, right? Because Sony is willing to support the console as long as there's demand for it. And so I think PlayStation 2 was the longest running service, supported service so far, or supported game console, excuse me, so far. And usually with Xbox, after a while, they're just like, we'll just kind of kick it to the curb, and I don't think we have too much longer before they do the same thing with Xbox One, which is kind of crazy because I'm looking at two of them right now that I got in my living room. And but hey, we're going to Ethernet cord everything together, and my kids and I are going to be able to play in 10 years, and it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. So looking at Xbox, they have about 40 million on Game Pass. We don't have current numbers, and it's actually really hard to look into this, which is frustrating. But what I'm, converting it through is Game Pass Core, also Console Ultimate or Game Pass Ultimate, and then also PC. So that's what all of these are going to be comprised of. And when we look at the numbers, we're looking at about 40 million on Game Pass, which is pretty insane. There was a little bit of a quote from LinkedIn, one of the employees saying, "Woo, we hit 30 million," but that was quickly taken down. And again, we don't know the context of that 30 million, if that was actually just console or if that was PC and console all put together. But there's about 12 million on Game Pass Core right now. There's about 28 million on Game Pass Ultimate for console. Well, that includes console and Ultimate. So that's a total of 28 million. And then there's about 20 million on PC. And so you total all of that up, it's about 40 million. Which is, actually, no, I'm wrong about that. On console, it's 40 million. And then there's an additional 20 million on PC. So that's a total of 60. I got my numbers wrong there. I apologize for that. And when you add all of the revenues together, it's somewhere between 6.5 and 8.8 billion dollars. Now we know with the Game Pass, Xbox has said, "Hey, we put in $1 billion into this service," and that's it. And so they're definitely making their money back. I mean, you're looking at a 650% minimum increase in sales, with what they're putting into what they're getting back. So they're, they're paying off that $1 billion. And then having, another $5.5 billion to play with after And if we get a better breakdown ever between Game Pass Console and Game Pass Ultimate, then we can kind of shorten these, hone these numbers a little bit. But yeah, they can make a max of almost $9 billion with Game Pass. And when we're taking a look at this, when we look at the total Xbox network, there's 120 million out there. And so that's actually, 13 million more than what Sony has. And again, this isn't everybody's actually buying everything, right? But this is about a third. Actually, yeah, it's almost perfectly a third Game Pass subscribers are on PlayStation Network. They're capturing about a third or so. And then they also have about 20 million in PC. And when we look over the time period from 2020 with the lockdowns, we're looking at 90 million to 100 million on Xbox Network to 120 million. And that's all in a span of about 32 months. That's ridiculous growth. That is crazy. And of course, what's drawing people is Game Pass Ultimate to the network. And even trying out for myself, the service is so expansive because we get all of the day one stuff. And this isn't just Xbox exclusivity. This is just games they would like to bring to the service. And a great example is Pal Worlds. So there's got to be a contract deal. Okay, we're going to bring it to the service on day one. Xbox cuts the developer a check and says, here you go, thank you for doing this. They also get paid annually, or maybe quarterly. Every so often they get paid a percentage to actually be on Game Pass. And I don't know exactly what the terms are. My guess is it has something to do with how many downloads it gets or how many players it has, something like that, right? Because there's no way you're going to cut a check of $32,000 just to some company that is just absolutely going gangbusters, blowing up like Pal World, right? You're going to pay hundreds of thousands for that, or maybe even, tens of millions or hundreds of millions, depending on the game. And we've known with some numbers that generally they're spending $1 million or maybe $10 million to actually bring a third-party game to Game Pass. Now, Xbox, of course, gets to decide how long it stays on there. And, of course, they have to agree to the contract. But normally, the contract can be drawn up anywhere from like 6 to 12 months or maybe extended beyond that. But again, this is kind of like, hey, scratch my back, make a good game, and I will keep you on the service. I'll scratch yours, and I'll keep paying you money. And this, I think, is really enticing to a lot of developers, especially small ones, because they get money right away. They don't have to wait for the sales. They don't have to wait for the transactions to go through. They can literally just get cut a check right at the beginning before they even before players get to play and say, hey, congratulations, here's your few $1 million. And for a lot of developers, that's profitable already. The game doesn't even really have to be played like Hello Neighbor. Like, there's no way that game, is, tens of millions of dollars. But it's been on the service, actually, for quite a while. And we have different iterations of that, too, by the same studio. And so, a lot of these smaller studios, they're making money. Now, a lot of the big studios, like AA or AAA, probably wouldn't necessarily have it come to Game Pass. But that's what makes Game Pass so enticing, is there's so much to play. When I first started the service, there was about 350 games on there, and now there's over 460. And they're adding more games every week. And these games, they're adding more than what they're taking off. So the service is still continuing to expand. And by the end of this year, I think we'll get probably around 550 games at the rate they're going by the end of December. And that is just a ton. Now, are most of these games you're going to play? No, probably not. But again, a lot of these games that are coming onto the service are day one stuff, and they're actually fairly fun. And it'd be cheaper to just pay for a monthly subscription than to buy a lot of these games right at MSRP. And so if last year, if you bought Redfall and Starfield, just the base games, well, that's $140 right there, and that almost pays for the entire service because it's about $200 a month. PlayStation's is a little cheaper. It's about $160 or $170 a month. Excuse me, folks, a year. Let me go over this data again. It's about $200 a year for Game Pass Ultimate, and it's about $160, $170 for PlayStation Premium. But again, Premium, it doesn't really change or grow that much, and Xbox has games coming every week. So If a game sucks or kind of blows or maybe isn't necessarily your cup of tea, then maybe you get to play something else like Lies of P. That was another good one. It's built well, it runs great, and there's also incentive to the developers to actually keep making their game because, yes, they did get a check at the beginning, but if they keep it on the service, they keep getting paid. And so there's really good incentive there. Instead of some of these games or developers where they're like, we're going to put out this game, oh, look at that, we made our millions or hundreds of millions or billions in a year, like Call of Duty, then they don't have to keep making it good. They can just keep getting us content to grind, and people will keep grinding it. Like yours truly, I just go for the free stuff. That's how I beat the system, because there's no way I'm paying for that garbage. Yeah, Xbox has a really good model here for their gaming service, and we know that this model works. It's not like this is the first time that they've done this. They first converted over their operating system for computers, Windows. They first built it and converted it over to actually be a service for 365. So they call it Windows 365. There's a lot of operating systems. There's, you got all of your programs too. All of that stuff is shoved in there. Instead of just buying a key code I guess a key, like a CD key, you're now just actually paying an annual service. And they know it works because they're seeing the revenue. We got to hear about this during their earnings call. They're also seeing this with all of their AI stuff, like ChatGPT, and now it's called Copilot on Bing, and there's other commercial versions that companies can pay for, and so they're seeing revenue on this too. And what's crazy is now they're doing it with gaming. We know that it also works with like Netflix and Apple TV and HBO and whatever else is out there, all of the other streaming services. And ultimately, I think this is just what's going to happen overall for the gaming industry, is we're going to see this push to service instead of product. And ultimately, I don't like this. Okay, I want to be able to just have my product in my hand. I want to be able to have my service. And I want to be able to actually own it, to possess it. I don't want someone else to tell me that they can't do that or whatever, or that they can just tear it from me whenever they want. I actually want to own the product, and so yeah, I think Xbox has a pretty good thing here. Also, with the Game Pass, we have the Starfield effect. So hearing, hey, a new IP from Bethesda, this is huge. We haven't heard this in quite some time. And so, hey, I'm going to buy Starfield, or I'm going to buy Game Pass, like yourselves truly, so that I can actually play Starfield for, $18 a month. And again, it's not just Starfield, it's a ton of these other games. And I didn't feel as burned for not buying the game physically. Now the physical copies are actually extremely hard to find. Walmart took them all off. You can't even find the physical copies of Walmart anymore. Walmart's going to get rid of all of their physical games anyway. They're going to phase them out through the rest of this year. But yeah, the gaming service of Game Pass is really, really good. So let's go ahead and get into console sales here. So with PlayStation, they're definitely doing really, really well. They're basically hitting the 50 million mark. They're getting very, very close to that. And 50 million console sales is huge. Now, it is a lot of hardware, and they're not making a lot of that. What they're doing is they're creating a really good pull to their consoles for sales because of all of the exclusives that they have. And again, their exclusives are very, very good. But again, I don't think their service is going to catch up unless they start doing it to day one. But unfortunately, that's going to be an issue, and we're going to get into that in part 2. So yeah, 50 million console sales, that's wonderful. They're doing a wonderful job, and their exclusives are selling it. For Xbox, they've hit about maybe 24, 25 million. And that's about half. And we know that Xbox, due to sales numbers, they have been losing the console war, quote-unquote, for the last several iterations, and they've never really done very good. Even during the earnings call this last week, we got to hear that Xbox was losing out on their hardware. And that they actually intend to lose on their hardware for the next several quarters. And that is a drag on them. but all of the money that they're making on everything else, including gaming service like Game Pass, they're not too worried about it because it's insane. Like the amount of money that they made last year was like $220 billion. That's nuts. For Sony, they made about $80 billion. And so Microsoft has a heck of a lot more money to play around with, and they can lose on some things and definitely end up gaining a lot more in the end, and not be worried about the loss of sales. Sony, on the other hand, they are making a lot of consoles, and their exclusives are going, but that's kind of locking them into a business model that they can't get out of. Because as soon as they try to create a service or expand on their day one service or something like that, or try to, maybe risk a little bit with other new IPs and they don't sell very well, then they're going to be losing money. And if they lose enough, eventually they're not going to make it as a company. Now, Sony's already been cutting back on a lot of different services outside of gaming, and all they really have left is the bulk of their electronics, like TVs and music and stuff like that, like speakers, and then also the biggest thing is their gaming side of Sony. That is their biggest thing, and so they've got to protect that. But I'm afraid that with protecting it as much as they've boxed themselves into a box, and that's going to hurt them in the end. And so yeah, the console sales, hands down, PlayStation is winning. But I think in the long run, Xbox is going to be king. And they're already making more money than what PlayStation is. I mean, Game Pass itself made about almost 50% of what all of Sony is making for their gaming side, if that makes sense. Sony made about $24 billion or $23 billion last year for all of their gaming stuff, and Game Pass alone made about 8 to 9 billion, which is insane. That's insane. And Xbox's Game Pass is still growing. And honestly, I'm going to be one of those guys. I'm going to keep it, because there's only so many times you can play a legacy game and enjoy it. Sony's got to do something else to make me want to spend on their service. So my kind of final thoughts of everything. PlayStation subs on multiplayer, So the subscription services, most of PlayStation subs are just on the multiplayer side. Again, that was 33 million out of their 47. And they got another 6 million in extra and 8 million in premium. And so they're not really making a lot of money on that. And when they raised their prices, that really upset a few people. And I know of a couple, at least around here locally, that said, nope, they're going to raise their prices without really adding anything. I'm not going to pay for that anymore. And so that wasn't, in my opinion, the right move for Sony. A lot of people are just sticking to the multiplayer side. We've also seen that Xbox, for their gaming service, a lot of their service is in their higher tiers. Game Pass Core is 12 million, while Console and Ultimate, there's 28 million. And there's another 20 million on PC. And that's amazing. And what's really going to blow up for Xbox, if they can get it there, if they can sell it well enough, is that there's 1 billion people that play gaming, or that do gaming on PC. So that's 1 billion people. That's a huge, huge market. That's insane. That is a huge market. And they're starting to tap into that. And so even if they got 1% of the PC market, that'd be 100 million players. Am I doing that right? Yeah. It'd be 100 million on PC, on Game Pass. So the potential is there. They just actually have to make the right moves and get them on the service. Also, too, Xbox, they're still having a really high growth on PC. It's not slowing down. They're also having high growth overall on their Xbox network. There's a ton of people on it, and it's still growing. And they're having high growth on their console Game Pass as well, and their Ultimate. Xbox is also breaching into a mobile store, so they have King now, and we're going to see a breach into mobile. We're also going to see a continued push into cloud gaming for Android. which I think is going to kill some of the other services. So this is not just console for Xbox anymore. Xbox is now becoming like a third-party reaching service across mobile, console, and PC, and cloud gaming and streaming and whatever else they want to call it. And then they're also having the introduction of AI, and I can guarantee you that we're going to start seeing that in our service, and possibly too for what the devs are doing too. If Xbox can utilize it well, they're going to continue to see crazy growth. One thing that Xbox did say is that they will kill their cloud service by 2027 if they don't see enough growth, because they know it's expensive. And also they would kill off the Game Pass PC if they also didn't see enough growth. So we could see those aspects of Game Pass going off, but again, we aren't going to see the destruction of Xbox. They're not going to cancel on it. And you know, Xbox is going a different route, and in my opinion, they're evolving. They're not devolving. I think they're devolving in a sense of what's better for the player. Again, I want to own my physical media, but I think that's something that we really can't stop long term. But as for the amount of revenue they're going to make versus Sony, Xbox is going to win. But I think we got to, wait to see that still. And we're starting to see that. And some things can change. We can also get a new CEO. I really worry about that. We could get another, Ryan at Sony that's just making decisions that is not best for the console and or for the player. But what I like with Phil Spencer is he's an actual gamer himself. And so he understands, and he is working on building a platform that he also would like to enjoy. And that gives me some hope. It really does. But as soon as we get a new CEO over Xbox, oh my word. I really worry about who that's going to be. I can't. Definitely. So we've seen with Xbox, their network is still growing, and with PlayStation, it's stagnating, even including during the lockdowns. It shouldn't have stagnated. It should have gone up, but we saw that the player counts are basically flat. So PlayStation is not growing their network. Again, their biggest thing is their console sales and their games that they're selling. PlayStation has about 23% of their total network and higher subs, and Sony only has about 13%. PlayStation Plus is a backwards compatibility list. We mentioned that before too, and Xbox's is free. Now, Xbox is not expanding their backwards compatibility list anymore. They're focusing forward on the future, which, yeah, as a business side, that probably makes the most sense. But I'm also sad too, because there's a ton of games that we also can't play. But I would like to see more remasters of actual games, but I would like to see more remasters like the Tomb Raider series of 1, 2, and 3 remaster. That is a great little collection, and I think they did a good job, and it was $30, and you get all DLC and everything else. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see remasters like The Last of Us Part 2, where it's only been out for 3.5 years. They could have made it as a launch title for the PlayStation 5, because from when they released The Last of Us Part 2 to the launch of the PlayStation 5, it was only 5 months. So it's not like they didn't have the resources to make it a launch title. They just chose not to, knowing they could probably remaster it and sell it to you again. And again, it's only been 3.5 years. The graphics are going to look better. We're also getting some extra content that was not added with The Last of Us Part 2. And we've also seen the cancellation of The Last of Us Online, which that was kind of surprising, but they're not willing to support that. But yeah, The Last of Us luckily is not $70. I think it was $50. But still, I think that's a little too expensive for a remaster of something that you just played 3.5 years ago. But hey, to each their own. It's your guys' money. There's nothing wrong with what you'd like to do. Game Pass's biggest advantage, or I should say Microsoft's biggest advantage, is Game Pass. And because Game Pass has the day one, and there's none for PlayStation. And PlayStation is going to have a really big problem taking it to day one. And we're going to get into all of that in part 2. And we got a ton of information from the Insomniac hack. But in part 2, we're going to look at PlayStation exclusives. We're going to look at the sales. We're going to look at some emails. and we're going to look at how Sony really feels about their place in the gaming industry. With this stuff in the Insomniac hack, we're not going to talk about future games. We're not going to talk about personal info, just the corporate side. That's it. So if you want to look up that other stuff, you certainly can. I'm staying out of it on purpose. But, that information is out there and available. So thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always like and sub and all that, but also sharing helps as well. I apologize, too, for this stuff in the background. It's just family life. It's just part of living. And, I got what I got, so that's all right. But, yeah, you can always find me at YouTube at GamingGarbage22, and you can also find me over at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee. And again, what really is going to help me out, folks, is just to share, just to get more people to see. And, did I miss anything? Leave a comment, start a conversation. Was there anything that I missed in this? What are some of your thoughts? These are mine with the data that's presented to me and with the data that's out there. And I'm sure we're going to get more, too, on Xbox this week and or next week. They did say they were going to do a business update in February, so I'm waiting to hear that. And, we'll see if some of the exclusives are coming to PlayStation. You'll hear it here. So part 2 is going to be focused more on PlayStation, and you can stay tuned for that. So thanks for listening, folks. I'll see you guys on the next one.